Wednesday, February the 21st, 2024 to order. Thank you for joining us this evening. Ms. Cropper, roll call.
Mr. Bibb.
Here.
Dr. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Stewart.
Here.
Dr. Strickler. Here. Mrs. Jonas.
Here. 13.1 Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone please stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.4, safety briefing. We have an exit at the top and at the bottom of the steps. Item 2.0, a motion to adopt the agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? And if anybody has an amendments, we can amend the agenda too if needed.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Mr. Bibb.
Yes.
Dr. Simmons.
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart.
Yes.
Dr. Strickler.
Yes.
Mrs. Jonas.
Yes. Item 3.0, minutes. Can I get approval of the minutes from the org meeting and the regular board meeting from January 17th, 2024?
I make a motion to approve items 3.1 and 3.2 as presented.
Second.
Dr. Strickler.
Yes.
Mr. Bibb.
Yes.
Dr. Simmons.
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart.
Yes.
Mrs. Jonas.
Yes. Item 4.0, special recognitions. Shane Hartley.
All right, good evening. Just want to take a few minutes here and make sure I get my list up here. We want to recognize all of our students who participated in the science fair. We had overall probably about 200 students who did presentations between the science fair part of it and the Innovation Expo. The Innovation Expo is something where students, especially younger students, get their hands kind of dirty into all kinds of different science experiments. So it's really a great opportunity for them to learn a lot about the scientific process. And then the science fair itself is the opportunity where typically high school students and some middle school students really dig in and have to do a presentation and do a lot of scientific research. And so we had, I believe, if I counted correctly, 28 students who received a score from judges. They get to be judged by at least 2 judges who are parent volunteers or community volunteers or staff volunteers to come around. They ask them questions and they give them a score. And based on that score, they qualify for the next round. And that next round, they go to the University of Cincinnati for Regional Science and Engineering Expo. And if they qualify from there, they may qualify for the State Science Day in Columbus later on this month. So it's a quick recognition here, but the countless hours that the students put in, the parents that support, the teachers that help create these opportunities is so greatly appreciated. Ms. Corey Mullins, science teacher at Turpin, and Mr. Dave Brandon, science teacher over at Anderson, really helped kind of oversee this at both the high schools. A lot of central office people did a lot of great work as well. Bob Buck is kind of the brains behind the operation. Laura Holtkamp did a lot of great work, and I hope I don't miss any, but we had a lot of our admin assistants who were super helpful as well. Barb, Hazel, Lucy, Amber, JC, and again, I hope I'm not missing any, but just a lot of great people did a lot of great work behind the scenes to help this happen. And the last group to make sure I don't forget about is the Forest Hills Foundation. They provide a lot of support as well for just getting the things organized, bringing the tables in, food for the judges. So again, can't thank those people enough. So list is up there. Fritz, Allison, Samuel, Beckett, Philippa, Jacqueline, Anaya, Olivia, Bella, Elizabeth, Vivian, Genevieve, Miriam, Rava, and Olivia, Sam, Julie, Alex, Tori, Zoe, Jet, Edric, Shael, Lillian, Blake, Carter, Caleb, Brindley. And I think that's all of them. Okay. And they all received notifications that, again, that they will be participating in the next round as well. So again, just recognizing all the great work that they did. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Congratulations to them. That's awesome.
Item 5.0, reports to the board, Forest Hills Teachers Association.
Good evening, board members, and thank you for your time tonight. I do have a brief update for February. To begin, the first 100 days of school for this year have come and gone. It's great. It's a great moment to pause, to appreciate all the time and energy that both our staff and our families have dedicated to student success this academic year. The mental, emotional, and physical well-being of our staff is something that I think about throughout the year, especially at this time in the calendar. The winter months can be particularly challenging. I'd like to highlight initiatives related to the well-being and professional growth of our staff. First, I'd like to acknowledge the work that the District Healthcare Committee does throughout the year, which includes representation from FHTA, both of our OPSI groups, the Forest Hills School District, and Horan and Associates. Specifically, I'd like to highlight a resource our staff now has access to through work that our committee has been involved in. The resource is called Modern Health, which provides a proactive response to mental, emotional, and physical health in our staff. Some highlights include access to coaching, therapy sessions, and group-based support. While it's a very new resource to staff, I'm already hearing positive anecdotal comments. Regardless of which resource we choose to access, I'm very happy to know that staff well-being is an ongoing conversation and a priority. Secondly, FHTA has secured several grants for this academic year from the Ohio Education Association to continue to support both the well-being and also the professional growth of educators within our organization. We provide ongoing support and communication to staff in our buildings throughout monthly meetings with our FHTA building leaders, and also provide opportunities for our members to connect with their colleagues throughout the year. We've hosted 2 social events for our organization this year here in our community and have plans for a third later this spring. These events give an opportunity for our pre-K-12 educators to be together in one space, to connect with each other and share stories. And probably most important, smile and laugh. Lastly, I've also had the opportunity to get into buildings this fall and connect with each of our teachers in their classrooms and spaces, and have plans to return and connect with them again this spring. One of my favorite things in this role is to see our educators at work with our students and letting them know that they are acknowledged and that they're appreciated. Thanks again for taking the time to listen this month and all months. Any comments or questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Forest Hills Foundation for Education.
Good evening. Happy spring. Yeah, right. I was telling my kids as I was driving here, I'm like, we're going to get another snowstorm. There's no doubt about it. But I will take the 64-degree weather today. I wanted to open my windows. It was that crazy. On behalf of the Forest Hills Foundation, just wanted to spend a few minutes and share with you all some local businesses that we've recently partnered with. We concluded our Show Your Love campaign, and so I specifically wanted to thank La Rosa's Pizza and Big B Coffee, along with Chic and Honey and Mercantile on Main. Over Valentine's Day, if you ordered pizza or went there and got coffee or went there and purchased items from their retail stores, a percentage went back to the foundation. So I always love to highlight that this is a true investment in the community when we partner with local businesses that also believe in the importance of education in our kids. So we do still have, through the end of the month, if you are so inclined to recognize someone, you can still do that as your Valentine. And I have the QR code up here. So if you took a picture of it, it would take you to the donate form where you could recognize and send someone a belated Valentine. So, and then speaking of businesses, if I can go to the next slide, we are super excited to officially announce that this will be our 15th year of the Forest Hills 5K, which will take place on Saturday, May 11th. And speaking of businesses, I know we have a lot of parents and a lot of folks who do a lot in this community. We are in the process right now of seeking sponsorships. So a lot of times those sponsors participate in the after party. There's a variety of different ways. I did want to give a quick shout out to OrthoCincy. So they are confirmed as our platinum sponsor, and I know I'll be able to share next month a lot of other businesses that really invest in this event. So that QR code directly links you to the sponsorship form. So if you have any interest in getting involved, I would love to say that the 5K to me is about bringing people together for the kids. It's a great day. We are excited to host the event again this year and look forward to continued collaboration. So any questions?
I just had one question I was thinking about. I think it was last month, we were getting close to the end of the, was it student and PTO, PTA grants
Yes.
that were out there? What's the timeline for hearing about those?
Yeah, great question. We actually had 19 applications this year. So this is our second full year of doing that. So just to provide a little bit of perspective, last year we had 8 and the year before we had 3. So that to me is a good sign that people are coming to the table and working. I will tell you too, there's a lot from actually students, which I'm super excited about. Our committee, we have a grant review committee, and they actually will be meeting in early March. And then the other thing we are doing this year was we're actually in the process of identifying between 3 and 4 students to actually serve on the grant panel that reviews all the applications. So I should know all that by actually the next school board meeting. Yeah, great question.
Stacy, I have one too.
Yeah.
Speaking of grants, I had chatted with Kim and John Eckert in the past, just kind of about the grant process and all that stuff, and the feasibility of having a grant writer in the district. And Kim had mentioned that there had been some discussions with the foundation about hiring a grant writer, at least on a part-time basis. What did that look like?
Yep.
Is that something that is still being explored?
What I can tell you is that we saw a need last year where we had the opportunity to have folks that understand how to outreach for outside grants. And so we actually have a couple parents who have done this for years on other nonprofits. They both work full-time, and so it wasn't, they're not doing this as a paid position or even part-time at all. I do see a huge need there, and I will tell you that I've actually I'm on the call tomorrow with Fort Thomas's Educational Foundation, and a lot of the school districts have a paid position through the school district that does this work. I can tell you that there is a niche to it. I've never personally done it, but I just know completing grants is no small task, as I know several people in this room have probably done that. So I would say in an ideal world, we would love to maybe find a community member that has experience doing that. We actually are seeking board members for next year. So if anyone is interested, but we haven't found someone that could give that amount of time to like something like that.
In a volunteer capacity?
Right.
Right, okay.
Right.
Yeah, Wendy and I were at the OSBA training earlier this month, and we spoke to some of the representatives there, and they said for a district our size, it's not uncommon for
Right.
someone to be on staff for that. So
Right.
can we
Well-
continue having those conversations with folks and see if it's something that the district wants to
sure.
pursue? And
Yeah, and John and Kim and I have previously talked about that I always like to say there's money out there, and how are we getting it and putting it towards the kids? So that's kind of where we're at. And then really, when you look at kind of the foundations model, we are seeking like other nonprofit funding. So I don't know if that is a little bit different than like education, you know what I mean, like from a school district. So, but I do see an opportunity for collaboration. I think it's just finding the right person.
cool,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, enjoy the rest of the spring day.
It's almost
Thank
over.
you. 6.0 superintendent update.
Thank you, Mrs. Jonas, members of the board. Shortly after the passage of the levy in last May, and to help inform our decision-making and prioritization process, particularly as it concerns the capital improvement process, we commissioned an independent third-party review of all of our facilities. And you may have remembered last fall we had Four Seasons Environmental come in and do a presentation of all their work. They were on top of the buildings, below the buildings, in the guts of the building. They were all over the place, but they're a very highly respected company in the industry. And so they produced a 700-page document that will also be posted this week on our website. But basically identifying those things and making sure that we knew the condition of all of our facilities. We also had the benefit of having some pretty good historical knowledge and expertise here as well. And so, with both of those pieces, we've come up with a 5-year capital improvement plan. And I do want to stress that not every item that's listed do we have the ability to get to financially, not right out of the gate. So it's a process over time. And if you remember, I shared that in October of 22 and provided that overview. So it's a very strategic move, and what we're creating is a 5-year process that kind of moves every year. So we will analyze every year the progress we've made. If there's something that comes up unexpectedly or something fails that we have to address, we have the ability to shuffle. So it becomes, I hate to use this term, but a kind of a living, breathing document, a snapshot at any point in time on our progress. So you're going to see a very aggressive approach this summer, beginning this summer. Summer is the time we make hay. Sorry for the Iowa farm joke. Couldn't help myself, but that is the time when we get the majority of our work done. It has the least impact on student learning. But to do that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, John's going to have share the slide presentation or shortened version so everybody can see it. But we're going to, excuse me, to make that happen. And remember, we just started our collections on the levy. So our first half just came in from the county auditor. The next one's, I believe, in October-ish time frame. But we want to be able to borrow ahead of time, which is a very common practice, kind of borrowing from ourselves. We don't charge ourselves interest, or we don't do anything like that, and the money gets replaced when those receipts come in. But it allows us to hit that window and hit it hard, because we have some pretty pressing needs, particularly when you start talking about the envelope of the buildings. And the envelope is the roofing, sidings, foundation work, asphalt, all those kind of things. But we really believe that if we stay at this in a couple of years, we're going to be able to extend the life of all of our buildings considerably more than expected. So just wanted to share that piece with you. Again, I'm going to have John share the slides, because I'm not going to try to pull that up from memory. It's not going to happen. So, and way you can see it. And then later this week, certainly by Friday, all that'll be on the website, and it'll have its own spot. And it'll be the capital improvement plan. So you'll be able to see that on an ongoing basis. Okay? We'll also update the facilities committee at each of those meetings on those progresses, so you can see the progress being made, changes that we may have to make based on the information we have at any point in time. Okay? The other thing I wanted to share real quick is the Ohio High School Athletic Association has passed several referendums here recently, and I just wanted you to be aware of them. And first of all, we are just in the beginning throes of the tournament season, so get out there and support your Raptors and your Spartans. We've got our swim teams are up in Canton right now, hopefully making a big splash, as this is the, sorry, I don't know why I make these. But it's pretty exciting, you know. So they're having a shot this weekend of taking a run at a state championship. So we wish them all the very best. And of course, other sports are doing, again, about to take off and start here in the next day or two. So if you don't know where to find that information, number one, go to you can contact your athletic director for that specific information, where, time, location, because these are on neutral sites, typically now, okay? You can also go to the Ohio High School Athletic Association website. There's a tab that says sports tournaments, and click that. If you look around in there, you'll find Southwest District Athletic Board. We are part of that. You have basketball schedules and brackets and wrestling and where those are located. So those are all upon us. But the piece I wanted to mention is they've added more divisions to athletics. And I mentioned this in a board update, but just wanted you to know this is on the horizon for next fall. So football already has 7 divisions, okay? And based on top 10% of teams, largest teams go into Division I, et cetera. They've added 7 now to volleyball, boys and girls basketball, softball, baseball. Boys and girls soccer will move up to 5 divisions. Okay, and what does that mean? Well, the likelihood is that we may be in a different division, but a lot of schools may, unless you're at a top end, a big, very large school. And that's really the reason, is we had so many teams that were getting in and playing in a tournament against teams that were 2x, 3 times as big. And so it levels the playing field. So kudos to them for doing that, taking that on. And so that seemed to pass very, very readily. And so I'm sure your ADs will be getting information. We don't know yet what that means for us yet, but we were kind of on the cusp anyway of moving a division just based on our size. So that could move us. I don't know. We just won't know until they take those tallies, okay? So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And finally, 6.2 would need your approval. We do this annually, and that is to be our membership to the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Again, it's an annual thing, and so I'm asking for your approval for that. Okay.
Just since I was searching yesterday and I Googled Turpin Athletics or Turpin Sports, I also know the high schools and Nagel all have their own page too with all the schedules.
They all got them.
Well, so I had to get track on the calendar.
You did, yeah. Sometimes the best thing to do is call. The secretary, they know right where they're at, you know, who's where, so. But I do need that's an action item that I need approval for.
Can we get a motion to approve the Ohio High School Athletic Association membership, 24 to 25?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Dr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Dr. Strickler?
Yes.
Mrs. Jonas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Item 7.0, public commentary. The board is committed to conducting its meetings in a productive and efficient manner to assure the meeting is completed in a reasonable amount of time while also recognizing the importance of adequate opportunity for public input. In order to conduct an orderly and fair representation of expression, the board will provide a period of 30 minutes for public participation per policy PO 0169.1 at every regular board meeting. Each speaker will have a 3-minute time limit. If there are more than 10 speakers, individual time will be adjusted. We do not allow yielding of time to others. The board does not discriminate based on the individual, content of speech, or viewpoint of the speaker. If several people wish to speak at the same on the same topic, the time may be adjusted at the president's discretion. Speakers are asked to speak from the podium and address the board. Speakers are asked to start by clearly stating their name and address, and the district expects attendees to treat others with respect and courtesy while expressing concerns or criticism about any issue or incidents. It looks like we have one person tonight, Mr. Mishek.
Kevin Mishak, 8433 Holiday Hills Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45255. Last week, my 14-year-old daughter asked me for help with an analysis of a poem in her 8th grade ELA class. I'd like to read you that poem. A Litany for Survival by Audre Lorde. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures like bread in our children's mouth, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instance and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid. It might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid. It might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. We are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will never be heard, nor welcomed, but when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. So we've been in the district about 8 years, and I am well aware of some of the mental health challenges this community has faced with its students. All right? My question is, has that been a self-inflicted wound? Do we raise topics that may or may not be appropriate in an educational setting without the appropriate guidance? We were never meant to survive. 8th grade ELA, Monday of last week. That was a fun night, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Mishak. 8.0 Human Resources, Mr. Fellows.
Good evening to the board. I'd say happy spring, but somehow it's still February. But it feels really nice out. Couple things just as we think about the upcoming spring. We are heading into a busy season in HR just in terms of staffing season and just kind of some calendar of events. February 9th, met with elementary principals. We'll sit down on the 1st of March with secondary principals in a series of meetings as we kind of start to gear up for next year. Students, similarly, have been sitting down with counselors, with teachers, talking about next year, and some course requests at the secondary level, and those requests are coming in as we speak. A lot of this will be covered in detail on Monday at our HR committee meeting. So that is scheduled for 4:30 next week, and looking forward to briefing the board on where things are. Although we don't have everything wrapped up, that would be really awesome if we did at this point in the year. But we've got a lot of great work ahead, and welcoming hopefully some great folks into the district in the coming season. In terms of the HR report, pretty straightforward agenda this evening. Do want to thank Kathy Chapman for her 16 years in the district. She's been at Maddox phenomenal individual, a resident here. Son went through, and we're going to miss her immensely. I know the Maddox Mustang family definitely will miss her, and we wish her all the best at the conclusion of this school year. Item B, resignation. C, leave of absence. D, just drawing your attention to appointment of new personnel. We've got 5 new classified hires coming in, 38 supplementals for approval this evening, most of them spring sports or spring shows, plays, productions, those kinds of things. 11 new subs coming in. Item E, we do have 8 student teachers or student observers coming in from local universities, shadowing our teachers, which is a great chance for us also to get eyes on them as a kind of a pre-interview, and those networks are important, so we're excited to have them joining us. Item F, 39 volunteers, can't do it without them. And item G, a few job descriptions for the board for review and approval this evening. I did jump quite over the fact that we're starting the consent agenda with this. Questions?
Are the volunteers like early student teacher volunteers, or is that separate? They are community volunteers who've just gotten background checks, so
Yep,
now they're on the
that's
list.
it.
Got it.
Yeah.
What role do these volunteers serve?
A whole host of roles. It can be volunteering for field trips. It could be volunteering at spring sports on the track team. A lot of it is athletic volunteers. That's probably most common. Spring musical, folks helping out with that. Any other questions?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused. Of the 3 job descriptions, are you just updating the job descriptions right now?
No, so there are 2 job descriptions that are being updated, and the one is the Executive Director of Student Services.
Okay.
That is the position that was vacated by Kelly Brazo in November of a year and a half ago, that we had not filled leading up to the levy. So that position will be returning. It's been reworked a little bit within Student Services Department, and it will coincide with the reduction of the Coordinator of Teaching and Learning as discussed earlier with it, which is Steve Traylor's position. We brought him over, and that position will end at the end of this school year.
So no additional FTEs?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, Hazel's lovely when I come to central office. Can we tell her no?
We've already did once. She retired, and we said no, and she came right back, and now she said, no, really, I'm out. So we put a British accent on our job, on our interview form as well. But
Perfect.
anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you. 9.0, Mr. Eckert?
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start out with 9.1 was the discussion item, not an action item, where we're going over the 5-year capital improvement plan in abbreviation. What I'd like to do is just draw your attention a little bit. Mr. Hook had mentioned how we had the Four Seasons environmental assessment come in, and then we took that to develop our 5-year capital improvement plan. Couple things just to help the board when we look at the next couple slides. The facilities assessment from Four Seasons looked at 5 basic categories. The MEP, which was all the mechanical, all the electrical, and all the plumbing. And then we had facade work, and that's brick and mortar, the envelopes of the building. Then they looked at asphalt, roofs, and bleachers. Bleachers are a large structure that many thousands of people are on, so those have to be inspected on a regular basis and improved upon. And then we also do internal assessments as we go through. If we looked at buses and vehicles, the technology stuff, Mr. Meese handles the technology. We look at the athletic facilities, and then there are miscellaneous pieces of equipment. One that you'll see on the first one is like a kiln. That's something that lasts 20 plus years, but when they go, they go. You know, so that's something we look at and look at some of the ages. So that's how we came up with our 77 projects that we have set forth for the next 5 years. And at the end of that 5 years, you know, not the end of the 5 years, at the end of this cycle, there'll be more projects put in place too, once we get these completed and go forward. So what we have in place and what Mr. Bazan is going to do a front-facing picture of is a year-by-year view of what our plan stands at this point. I know Mr. Hook said it, but I want to elaborate. These are at this point because these are malleable, flexible documents. Right now, these are all the projects we are intending and hopefully going to complete this summer. We call it summer. Some will go into the fall, obviously, and some have already started. But in a way we say, hopefully, because these are estimated numbers, not every single number's in place. But working with Ms. Cropper, these are the available funds that we have. So we're not going to go above these numbers, on this project. And that's what helps this be a malleable document. So let me just give you an example. I don't believe this is going to happen, but let's just give you an example to better understand. If you look down in the section that says roofs, if you notice to the left, there are numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are priority numbers. Not that every roof isn't important, but the worst to the best. So let's just say roof numbers come in much higher. What we would do then is look at, financially, if we need to take a roof off this year, we would move number 5 into next year, okay? Now, conversely, let's just go with the fantasy that our roof numbers come in crazy low, and Jody, if you could bump to 25, you look in the 25 section under roof, what we could do if it was really low, and I have it highlighted on my document so I can read it better, we would bring the Maddox roof forward a year. And so that falls into all these categories. Some categories are 100% number ones. You'll see Mr. Mises Technology back on this year's projects, the 24 projects are all number ones because they have to get done, okay? So we don't have flexibility in that process. And so that's how it will move. And then every season when we're finished, I'll call our season, the operation season, the summer season, we will then check off what we have completed and then look at the next year and the next 4 years and make sure we believe the alignment is still the same. And then, or if it isn't, then adjust it because we could have some catastrophic issues that come in that make us adjust something, or we could, have a better life expectancy than we plan. We want to say this piece of equipment theoretically will die in 2 years. But if it doesn't die, we're not going to replace it just because theoretically it could die. So that's how we have to be very flexible with this. We will always have financial, I don't want to say constraints, but financial guardrails that, Ms. Cropper and Treasurer's Office will set forth for us, and we work within those guardrails. But that's how this is an adjustable document. And those adjustments, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Brazan, we will be, when we make the adjustments, we will be posting appropriately so the community sees on a regular basis where we are with the project so they can have an anticipation moving forward. It's a good system. I really think we're in good shape with this. The ability to have 4 seasons come in and do an independent assessment has made a huge impact on where we can go forward. And then the greatness, for lack of a better way to say it, the great public that we have that voted in the permanent improvement levy is now letting us get as aggressive as we are being. This is Mr. Hook keeps giving me a hard time that I'm going to be very busy and run through many pairs of shoes this summer trying to keep up with all the projects, and I'm okay with that. I know this body says cardio, but I can do it. So we'll keep rolling forward with that, okay? Sorry, just had to go there. But so that is the process overall. I know it's real quick, sort of shoved down the throat for the group that didn't get to see this. But conceptually, does it make sense, or does anyone have any general questions that I could help with?
John, I think one of my questions as I was looking through the list is I've definitely gotten the sense through talking to Larry that it is very good we have this larger PI fund, that we have some immediate needs. There's no doubt about it. We've got to take care of these. And so I appreciate that in terms of that sense of urgency for this summer. But it does feel like a list moving forward, I guess, 2024 moving forward. And I'm just wondering, that feels a little bit reactive to me, I guess, as opposed to, are we looking 10 years out from now? And where does the discussion happen about what do we need our facilities to look like for our kids to be best able to thrive? And do we have a sense of the lifespan of our buildings? Do we need to be having any conversation? And again, I don't know, so I'm just asking questions, right? But if we know one of our buildings only has a 10-year lifespan, then do we need to be looking ahead to say, well, this building is going to need replaced in some way, whether, whatever that looks like, and we don't want to spend as much money on a roof 5 years from now for that building because, we need to be prioritizing the lifespan of our buildings, what we're doing. So I was just curious how we look at this from the perspective of, again, recognizing, a furnace could go out tomorrow and all of those kind of things, but how do we get a handle on kind of what's the 5-year plan backwards, or what do we need to be thinking about? And one of the things that brought this to mind was just instructional space and needs. And I know our population is not growing, but I will tell you, I was in our building hosting preschool, and they are everywhere in that building and need a lot of space, and that group does seem to be growing. So it just left me wondering, is there kind of a backward design vision?
Let me go about this way. There are actually parallel conversations.
Okay.
We always want to look, where we would be down the road. We have two missions. One, the forward plan. I totally understand what the instructional spaces, creative spaces that we can get into the buildings and things like that. So what we want to do with our list, and I understand the impression that it's reactive, it's actually a planned reaction. If, our reaction is, wow, all of a sudden this roof that's never leaked is now going into 4 classrooms. That's where we've got to react, adjust the plan on the fly, and go forward. These are all industry experts, engineers, and everything that came in and did these assessments. So that gave us and as far as lifespan of a building, okay, if your building is maintained, what we would call the bones, buildings can last exceptionally long. Okay, if you keep the bones. I'm just going to throw a personal reference. When I was the principal of Laughlin High School, my office literally turned 100 years old. The cornerstone outside my window was 100 years old. And that building's still standing today because the bones were taken care of. And this plan will help improve extend the longevity of the buildings. And when I'm saying a longevity of a building, we're talking 30, 40, 50 plus years. Now, there's going to be inner parts of buildings that we have to do that, be some larger things. But then the parallel conversation is, are we looking to do something different with the building makeup of the district? That's a parallel conversation that if that comes into play, then that would adjust the other. So it's a yin and yang almost. We got to come together. So right now, this program is, you're correct. We make the assumption these are our buildings for life.
Okay.
That's the way I look at it. And we plan to keep those buildings in shape. But it doesn't mean those other conversations can't take place.
Okay. And we're going to get to a place of more preventative maintenance.
Yes,
Right
that-
now, it feels
thank
like
you.
we're
That-
in crisis a little bit with roofs,
yeah.
at least.
Correct.
Having walked Anderson recently, and there were a lot of buckets.
Yeah,
Do you have
lots of
your umbrella?
buckets. Yeah. Some call them buckets, some call them water effects.
Okay.
No, you are correct, because if you look through the plan, okay, we've got all 5 years in here. It does, certain years are decreased, and we work it down. I don't expect to come here every year saying we have 77 projects in place. And then what that will do is, we don't spend money just because we have it. If we don't have it, then I think one of the board members, I think Ms. Jonas may have asked about a reserve level in the PI. When we get to those parts, eventually, yes. But right now, been in crisis. We're in quote-unquote crisis mode with the buildings. So let's get them solid. Let's get the bones healed. And then that's when we start doing that. And then you're right. Then we can look at some great preventive maintenance programs and get really deep and hands dirty with that. So we extend it all the further.
So I guess, John, it's a fair statement to say that the pool at Anderson, it failed because it wasn't maintained.
Guaranteed.
And our roofs right now are getting ready to fail because they weren't maintained.
Yes.
So that,
Wilson.
and what's that?
We had to build a whole new Wilson because
Correct.
it was not maintained.
Yeah.
And,
So when the people, and I understand the no pool at Anderson, I understand that crowd, and I'm as frustrated as they are, but we don't have the money for that right now because we have to take care of everything else that's failing before they end up like the pool.
Correct. I think that's a great summation.
And I have a question, Anderson, because I know the roof's in pretty bad shape. It just says roof replace number 3. Are we just doing a section or?
Okay, that's a great thing. I can go into that real
Okay.
quick. What has happened, and this is part of our challenge with the roofs that we have, we've just been patching for years and years and years. And then we had the bond project, okay? And only 20% of all roofs were even touched in that project, all right? That's not an exact figure, it's a rough figure, okay? So what we've been doing until this year, we've been fixing the other piece of the roof, So what's going to help us now, all these roofs will be what we call complete. In other words, they're all going to be within a 5-6 year, every section within a 5-6 year time frame for warranty purposes. And we get a 15 to 20 year warranty out of a roof. So then 15, 20 years down the road, then we replace a roof as a whole unit and not do all this quilt patchwork stuff that gets us in these challenges. Because no matter what, you have a patch and a patch, there's still a seam in a patch. You know, so that will get us past that. So yes, that's why you will see, even if you go through, there's going to be sections and sections. But anything we have planned at this point makes the roofs complete.
Okay. And when Four Seasons was going around and looking at everything,
Yes.
was our janitors and facilities, were they with them and pointing out anything?
Yes.
Okay,
Every head custodian was engaged.
okay,
And Mr. Corley was engaged 24/7 with them. And when Four Seasons came in, just to give them their due respect, it's just not a couple guys in a suit and one construction guy. They actually hired engineers, roofing facilities companies, structural engineers, hired all that to come in and do the assessments. So it's much more in depth than we could ever do in-house. And they pulled together 5 to 6 different disciplines to give us this assessment.
I think it's important to reemphasize that something you said earlier, that we're able to do these repairs because of the levy that passed.
Yes.
If we didn't have that levy, if we didn't have that money, it would come out of general funds, any sort of emergency repairs that need to happen. So, you know, when people ask, like, how's the community using the money? What's the levy money going to? This is a great example of it preserving the life of our facilities. With that said, though, and Alana, I don't know if this is something that you were going to bring up in the treasurer's report, at the facilities meeting, you had noted that since we just started collecting all the money, we don't quite have the 5.4 million all right now. We're borrowing and going to pay back. Is that something you're going to talk about later, or can you briefly touch
That
on
is
that?
something that's in the treasurer's
Perfect.
report.
Okay,
Yes.
great,
Yeah.
thanks.
I'm glad it's in the treasurer's report.
Yeah.
Okay, on 9.1, this part, does anyone have any further questions? Everybody looks good? Okay. Now I'll move on to business items. First one is 9.2. That is a residency waiver. Remember the senior exception piece. The students' parents moved mid-year as a senior, so we allow them to stay and graduate as a senior from Anderson High School. 9.3 is the contract for our landscaping services. after many proposals and interviews, we've moved with Ground Systems Landscaping Service to do all our facilities. They'll do pretty much what is done, but we do have a different company this year and looking for some different flexibility in movement and process. So we're very excited to bring Ground Systems into the fold to help us keep care of our physical facilities also. In item 9.4, this is a resolution to approve cooperative purchasing contract for roofing improvements. Remember, I mentioned this at the Facilities Committee meeting. The EPC in this case, no, excuse me, this one, yeah, this is the EPC. The Qualis, it's consortium-based. The EPC is how we always buy our buses with consortium pricing, because the consortium does all the state bidding, all the bidding nationally and state level, and they are bound, anyone who works through these consortiums are bound to beat the state minimum pricing. It's AEPA pricing. So it's a resolution that we will be doing a roofing project through Equalis, and you'll also see names called Roof Connect. That's their subdivision that we'll work with on that piece. The next and final item in my report is 9.5, and again, we're doing a cooperative purchasing for the Anderson turf and track improvements, and we're going through that process also. And again, the same state minimum pricing and bids and everything take place with that. So at this point, do I have any questions on any of these items? I sort of ran through those pretty quick on you.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
It might be an awkward one, but as I listen to this, knowing want to be fiscally responsible in our district, I'm also have you get what you pay for going through my head. So when you keep saying like they must meet the state minimum pricing, that's great, but where is the condition of quality in that as well?
Thank you for the segue.
Okay.
Okay? That's one reason, and that's one reason that I've done a lot of work and research and worked with business managers all across the state on cooperative purchasing.
Okay.
Because the ideal is a quality company has to use those prices. So I'm just going to say, let's go with the Strickler Roofing Company.
They would be good.
They're great. Yeah, they're great people. They are really strong. Great workmanship. Their word is good. Okay. You go into a straight bid process that we put out the bids, and can I pick on you, Miss Stewart? We go with the Stewart Roofing Company. She comes in $1 less, but has a bad reputation, boom, boom, boom. We got to go with that company.
Got it.
So in this case, we can control the quality vendor that comes in, and we know the prices they must meet. It's, truthfully, after talking with a lot of the research we've done with turf companies, and, I've dug deep into consortiums, they actually prefer it too, because they know their margin, they know what they're going to get, and they know they can work with a company or an organization that they have a good relationship with also.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so at this time, I respectfully request that the board approve agenda items 9.2 and 9.5 as part of the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10.0, teaching and learning, Mr. Hartley.
Okay, a couple more overnight trips for your perusal and hopefully approval. First one is a history of Western music lovers trip. This is, as I mentioned last month, what we try to do is get all of our international trips to big meetings throughout the year. This was a trip that we were still kind of working on in progress, because what we really want to make sure that is, if we're taking kids on an international trip, that it is aligned to our curriculum. So we just want to make sure that we've got our T's crossed and our I's dotted. So that's the first one. And then the second one is next year's 2025's 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. So they haven't even taken it this year, but we're already looking, and Miss Brennan is on top of things. She gets better price if she can start having parent meetings in March for the 2025 trip. So that's why we're asking for this approval for this month. The second thing presenting is an international exchange student, a foreign exchange student for Turpin High School for next school year. The young lady's name is Carlotta Jimenez. In general, kind of big picture, real quick, the process is that often a company will reach out to myself or a principal and say, hey, do you have any openings? Would you be willing to host a foreign exchange student? And we have conversations with the principals. Principals love bringing in students who are foreign exchange students, but they also want to be strategic and not bring in everybody who requests. So it's a conversation that we try to keep pretty low because it's a stressful situation for the student. Along with that, the companies that reach out to us have to submit a full application, and there's board policy that we have to go through. And so it's not just a random email or a phone call. It's a pretty long process. And again, we work with those companies. And so that's the situation with Ms. Jimenez from Spain. Full vetting process, seems like a great young student, and she will be staying already. They've worked to stay with the Turpin family as well. So are there any questions on items 10.1 and 10.2?
Yeah, Shane, how do the international trips come about? Is it a teacher that has a passion for something, student interest? How do we ensure that all students that want an experience like that have an opportunity to do something? Because this one seems pretty niche.
It is. And I think that it's probably a little bit of everything. A lot of it does start with our teachers who are interested in it. Not every teacher is willing to take, and I don't blame them, 30 or so students across the seas. But Ms. Donna Laver is our district coordinator for international trips, and she works with teachers. So the process is we send out information once or twice a year to teachers through our Forest Focus, and we say if you're interested in getting in and leading an international trip, reach out to me, and then I put that teacher in contact with Ms. Donna Laver. Donna works with that teacher and says, here's what goes into all of these processes. Tell me what you're interested in. So we had a new teacher this year, Ms. Orick, who was approved last month. She was brand new to our district, but she's led some international trips before. She said, I'm interested in bringing some students across seas for some science research. So that was a conversation that Ms. Laver had with Ms. Orick, and then they fill out a big, long form that details dates, times, costs, chaperones, a lot of information that we have them go through, and that's through an administrative guideline form that we updated last year. Once we go through that and we have all the conversations, then once it, again, crosses T's and dots I's, then that's when we bring it for board approval. So this one is, again, kind of niche, but what our teachers will often do is they'll put something in the parent newsletter, or the student make announcements as well. If anyone's interested in fill in the blank trip, seeing a World War II trip, then meet with or send an email to Ms. Donna Laver, by whatever date is. So we try to get that information out to the students. They reach back out, and then from there, it's a conversation of holding a meeting, bringing the people in who are interested, sharing the information, and then seeing which students sign up, and continues the process until the trip takes place.
Yeah.
So
Great, thank you.
yeah, okay. If there are no other questions, I recommend that the board approve items 10.1 and 10.2 as part of the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11.0, Teaching and Learning Student Services. Mrs. Ryan.
Good evening. Good evening. For 11.1, special education has a Hamilton County Developmental Disabilities contract before you this evening. This contract supports the provision of school-age services for our students with disabilities for the 24-25 school year. It is early. It is typically taken in February of the preceding year because Hamilton County DDS is required to notify districts by that date, and then we subsequently have to agree to the services for that next school year. For this particular contract, for the past several years, Forest Hills has not utilized the services. We currently service our students with very, very intensive needs in our district buildings and programs. At this time, we do not have students placed at Bobby B. Fairfax School, which is one of the DDS facilities. Changes to the contract for 24-25 included, if you had seen the previous contracts, they typically were very general. This year, they included language specific to contracting for educational assistance. You may have seen that. As well as some language around the records management system that they maintain now and confidentiality to their health and their student records. So that's the change for this school year. For item 11.2, we have an addendum to the annual IHM contract or annual contract with HCESC for services at IHM. The annual agreement was proposed back in June of 2023. I proposed it with the Hamilton County Educational Service Center, the bigger contract. This particular contract supports services to IHM where federal funds are used. They use IDEA, special education, and auxiliary funds. This is an addendum to decrease by $32,661.20. They're reducing their reading instructional services and the supervision fee, and it's really due to the fact that they weren't able to fill that position at IHM. So they used it for a period of time and then could not fill it and are now having to reduce the contract. So it is recommended approval for items 11.1 and 11.2 as part of the consent agenda. I should have asked if you had any questions.
Can I ask you a question real quick about the federal and auxiliary funds? Those are determined district-wide, and then are they given to the public and private schools? Or, I mean, IHM isn't taking any federal dollars from Forest Hills. It's allocated, correct?
That's correct. It's allocated through Forest Hills.
Okay.
And then there is an allocation formula that is designed based on the number of students with disabilities, for example, that IDEA funds can be directed to.
Okay.
But they do flow through the school district, and there's a consultation for how they're going to be spent.
Okay. Thank you.
But they're allocated specifically for this purpose to be
Yes.
used. It's not funds that we could use for something else going to private schools.
They are specifically for this purpose,
Gotcha.
for the purposes of intervention services, either through reading instruction, aid services, and then the special education services are generally speech and language. They use some for occupational therapy and physical therapy, some even for intervention specialists. IHM does not use these funds for that purpose, but some non-publics do.
Great, thank you.
And Betsy, correct me if I'm wrong, because this very well could be, but they could get the funds directly sent to them, is that correct? But they prefer to work through the public school district, or is that, because these are basically kind of flow-through funds, correct? For lack of a better term.
Correct.
Okay.
And at this time, my understanding is the funds must be allocated through the school district, and the school district determines how those funds can be spent.
There's a difference between
consultation.
federal grant funds. Federal grant funds have to come through the district, but state law did change just a couple years ago for state funds. So when you see the funds that 401 is the state auxiliary fund, and now the private schools do get to choose whether or not those funds flow through us. IHM has chosen to continue to have those funds flow through us. Miami Valley has decided to receive those directly.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So, but the difference there between
state.
state and
Okay.
federal.
Thank you. And on the HCDDS contract, just because you pointed out there were differences, are we going back to using that this year? Are there students who need more support than we are able
Not
to
at this
provide? Or
time.
you're
None
this
that-
is just an
No students that I'm
optional
aware
in
of,
case
or
of?
that's, I'm sorry.
Sorry, so this is just kind of an optional if needed right
Correct.
now? Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
And I would say probably we have not placed a student there for almost a decade.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 12.0 treasurer update.
As always, we start the treasurer's report with good news, the donations received over the past month. And over the last month, we received just over 9,000 in donations. Item B is the cash activity statement, which presents all revenue, expenditures, encumbrances, and balances in all board funds through January 31st. So as you can see, our fiscal year to date includes receipts from all funds of $56 million and expenditures in all funds totaling $63 million. Item C presents only the general fund, which is our 5-year forecast fund, and it presents the receipts for the month in the fiscal year to date ended January 31st. As you can see, January was pretty low cash flow month. The primary money we received during this month was our semi-monthly state funds, but we did receive the first advance of our spring tax collections in the amount of $770,000. So spring tax receipts are starting to roll in. We'll get we should get about $25 million for the half. So quite a bit more still to come. Moving on to items D and E. These reports present the expenditures in the general fund for the month and the fiscal year to date ended January 31st. Again, expenditures in the general fund are very stable throughout the year. You can pretty much divide annual expenditures by 12 and come up with a pretty close number. So with 58% of our fiscal year complete at the end of January, we have spent 55.7% of our appropriations, with an additional 6% committed in encumbrances. So spending is tracking exactly where we might expect at this point in the fiscal year. Item 8 presents the activity in our main PI Special Cost Center for the month of January and fiscal year to date ended then. As you can see, during the month of January, the district also received an advance payment of $5,000 of the expected tax proceeds from what we expect to be $1.44 million for our half receipts this year. So those are just our half-year receipts that we expect to receive this spring. The January 31st bank reconciliations and investments are presented in agenda item G. And this month we have quite a few appropriation adjustments to bring forward. And this is where you're going to see the activity to take care of the summer projects. So it's important to note that we do pass appropriations at the beginning of the year, and those are estimates. And as the year passes or progresses, more information becomes known. And of course, we did the planning for our summer projects. So during this time then is when we bring back some adjustments to appropriation to cover that information. So as we looked at the projects that John went over earlier in the meeting, as we as administration looked at what we believed we needed to accomplish this summer, we determined that it would be in the district's best interest to loan some dollars from the general fund to the PI so that we could get some contracts in place within the next month. Contracts that need to be paid with PI funds cannot be paid unless the money is actually sitting in the account when you write the PO. So And generally, even though the work's not going to be done till this summer, it's best to let the contracts now, or get all of our work under contract now, especially roofing contractors. It's important to lock down early so that you get good prices and you can actually get companies in to do the work. So you see there that there's a change in general fund appropriation to set up a short-term loan of just over $1.2 million. So we'll move the money from the general fund to the PI fund, and that'll allow us to sign all necessary contracts in a timely fashion to get the summer work done that John spoke up earlier. The loan will be repaid this summer with the interest earnings between now and then and tax receipts that are expected in the PI fund later this summer, typically during the first couple weeks of July. The interesting thing is that the bulk of the work will probably not be completed till the end of July, and certainly we don't pay for work until it's done, so it's highly likely that all the PI funds will actually be sitting there in the account and the loan paid back prior to us actually writing any checks. But again, it's important to follow state law, so that is why we have this extra appropriation here in the general fund. The net cost to the general fund, again, can't be said enough, is going to be zero, because all general interest earnings go to the PI. The money is going to be sitting in the bank accounts, earning interest. It's just really a paper transaction so that we can sign contracts. Going on to the change in appropriations for the PI, that is to up the appropriations to cover the requested summer projects that John went over again earlier in the meeting. We are also asking for appropriation increase to the Shanahan Scholarship Fund. This scholarship fund is one whose expenditures are restricted to interest earnings. You cannot touch the principal. And of course, we know what interest has done over the past year, so interest has been up. So we're increasing the appropriations to allow more scholarship awards as we come to our closing months here. There's a couple of small adjustments in grant funds due to changes in allocations which occur throughout the year. Moving on to item I, it is actually the approval to do the loan. So item H, increase general fund appropriations to be able to fund the loan, but we also need to get your separate approval to actually do the short-term advance from the general fund to the PI fund. Are there any questions on the treasurer's report?
And I know I've asked this before, and I can't find the answer in my email. Report C, student fees, 90,000. What is that for again?
That is generally our kindergarten fees, so there was probably kindergarten deposits due, and so it would be kindergarten. In the general fund, you're going to have kindergarten and you're going to have summer school, but it's not the time of the year to have summer school. And also, you're going to have a portion of preschool.
Okay. So have we not collected any funds then for kindergarten this year?
Let me take a look. Looks like during tuition, or this year so far in tuition, student fees. I'm sorry, I answered you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I answered the wrong question. I answered tuition. Student fees is actually, that's summer school.
It is summer school.
It's summer school. Sorry,
makes sense
I
then.
don't know why I answered,
That's okay.
I answered the question for tuition.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, I have paid my student fees, so I know it's not zero.
It's in 009. So that would be in report B, 009 fund, down under uniform supply.
Yeah.
That's what the state calls student fees. Go figure.
Uniform supply.
Uniform supply. Any other questions? Hearing none, I respectfully request the approval of the treasurer's items in 12.1A through 12.1I as part of the consent agenda action items that began with item 12.1 through 12.1I. Thank you so much for your attention.
I'll make a motion to approve action items 8.1 through 12.1 as presented. It's part of the consent agenda.
Second.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Dr. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Strickler?
Yes.
Mrs. Jonas?
Yes. Item 13.1, board discussion. Anybody want to take the floor?
I will take the floor just for a minute. I just want to acknowledge Mr. Mashiach and what you shared with us today, and I appreciate hearing the poem. I would love to know more about the context, I guess, from the teacher, but I guess what I would like to say from the perspective of a mental health professional is there is a lot of information out there to suggest that talking about mental wellness issues helps to reduce the stigma and helps our students to know that it is okay to talk to others and okay to talk about these things, and it's okay to not be okay. We know that the mental wellness crisis is not localized to Forest Hills, that it is very much a national issue, a state issue, and I am not meaning to demean the issue in any way. I spend a lot of time trying to think about how we can do better as a district, as a state, as a nation for all of our children. But I do feel the need to put out there that I think being able to talk about mental wellness is, from the research, very much seen as a positive. And I find amongst our students, they are more open maybe than I would find my generation has been about being willing to talk about these issues. When you can talk about them and you feel connected to others, that does help develop resilience, and that's part of what we want to help to develop in our kids. So I very much appreciate the concern. I appreciate you bringing it forth. I do think it is a conversation we need to continue having in terms of how to continue to help our students.
Do you think? It's not what the poem was about, by the way.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Well, this isn't a back and
This is
forth,
public.
you guys.
Yeah.
But-
So I wanted to bring it up from the mental wellness lens that you broached regardless, that I do think it is important that we provide opportunities to talk about mental wellness in the district. So I just wanted to respectfully.
Again.
And the context is also important. Parental involvement. All right? I was a bit blindsided by that one. All right? I was unaware that an 8th grade ELA instructor was covering that topic with my 14-year-old daughter. It's an African-American lesbian poet writing in the 70s about hope.
Okay,
So
Mr.
much
Looney,
better.
please,
So
okay,
much better.
Get my name right, lady.
okay. Thank
You
you.
can leave.
No.
You're
And miss this great conversation.
I appreciate the context. I appreciate the commentary.
that outburst
I-
every time you're here. I
I
can't.
do think there was more context to it, and we could certainly take the opportunity to explore that, but I wanted to share the mental health lens on it, and that's what I wanted to share regarding that.
Thank you. Anybody else want to take the floor?
I know that, speaking of mental health and all of that stuff, that constantly talking about it and bringing it to the forefront actually causes more anxiety in students. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the best route to go. I found that poem to actually be really disturbing, and I didn't actually understand the entire reason we would be talking about that. And I mean, I have family members with mental health issues, and if you start bringing stuff up like that, it causes more anxiety and more problems. So just my own perspective. I would have been upset if my kid was going through something and brought that poem home, because that can be very triggering for a student.
Yeah, I had a couple things I wanted to touch on. First, this was brought up at the Forest Hills Council meeting back earlier this month, and then it's something that Wendy and I kind of recommended at the OSBA new board member training. It was about a board strategic planning meeting to discuss strategies and goals among the board. Is that something that's happened before? Is that something that the board is interested in? And if so, we can start looking into logistics and aligning with district goals and objectives as well to make sure we're all on the same page with what we want to accomplish over the next 2 years.
and my comment to Jason, and I would welcome any input, was I wasn't sure about order of operations, because I do think as a board, it would be good to come together around goals, but I'm not sure if those goals are around how we help support and hold the district accountable for their goals. So if it's part of a larger strategic plan, or if a usual, I guess, strategy meeting amongst the board is an annual occurrence for those of us who haven't been here before.
I think we
I
did
thought
it.
we did something like that
We did
with
it like
Scott
the
when
first
the
month when
very
Scott was
first-
here,
Yep.
and then I don't think we've done it since. No, we haven't done it
That is
since.
Was it helpful?
We were only in the office for like 4 weeks at that point, so
Yeah.
everything changed when, different leadership, everything changed, so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Specifically, were you hoping to get out of
Yeah.
it? Or?
I have no issues with it. I mean,
So some of the stuff they were talking about is, obviously the tenor of school board meetings in the past couple years had been heightened. And so OSBA talked about resources they can provide to help reset the board, an order of operations, developing norms for working with each other, developing board policy, and doing it over a workshop day to help us set these strategic goals for, we're limited in when we can actually talk to each other and how much we can talk to each other. But it makes it difficult for us to all get on the same page of this is what we would like to see happen over the next 1 year, 2 years, leading into the future beyond that. And so if we have an opportunity for a workshop day where we can come together and brainstorm and have these opportunities to talk and make sure we're on the same page about where we're going, I think it is the benefit of our district. Would others be
What are
interested?
your
or-
thoughts
Yeah.
on having something like that? I mean,
That's, having OSBA come in? Is that what you're?
That was one option.
That
I'm
was one piece.
suggesting,
I don't think
I don't think
didn't
that's,
somebody from SBA come in?
Cheryl Ryan did.
Yeah.
I can certainly look into it and get back some information on it. Yeah, that's not don't have an issue. The biggest issue is finding a time for you guys to
yeah,
carve out. It's probably going to be a weekend.
yeah.
Well, it could be an evening. Could be an evening too. So
I enjoyed
Just
spending
ponder
my
that. I
weekend
can
in
throw some
Dayton.
information.
Right.
I don't do anything.
And then just the last few things, I wanted to have a few shout outs. I'm the liaison for the Adopt a School program for both Summit and Wilson, and there were a few things that I'd reached out to the principals about that I wanted to just bring to light here at the board meeting. First, this was publicized earlier this month on the Forest Hills social media pages, but there's a third grade teacher at Summit, Natalie Smith, who was named the Warm 98.5 Teacher of the Week, having been nominated by a student. So that was a pretty cool moment for our district. Also at Summit, there were 8 4th and 5th graders chosen to participate in the Ohio Music Education Association Children's Honor Choir, and they're going to be performing at the state conference later on this spring. As we know as well, we just had Kindness Week in Forest Hills School District, and I wanted to share some things that they did at Wilson. Students were tasked with writing kind messages to important people in their lives and accept a kindness challenge to identify someone that's important in their life that they could do something nice for. I'm actually still waiting for my son to fulfill that one. But also, there was a recent meeting, technology meeting with the administration at Wilson and the district staff administration. One of the 4th graders got to come into that meeting and share their thoughts on student needs for technology at Wilson. So there was student voice included in those conversations, which I thought was pretty cool. And that's all I have.
I just want to capitalize on that moment too. I reached out to Anderson and Ayer and actually have a joint shout out of amazing things happening in our district. Anderson, and I believe Turpin is looking at something similar, has recently started a new group called SALT. It's Student Athletic Leadership Team, and they are going into the elementaries. And this last week we're at Ayer with the 4th graders sharing messages about respect and leadership and how that looks on the field, off the field, in school, out of school, and then had the chance to do some different sports and fun things together to put all those lessons into place. And I think that's really awesome that we're looking for ways that our older students can help model and lead our younger students as well. So kudos to Anderson and Turpin for what they're making happen there as well.
All right, 14.0 is executive session. There is nothing to follow from executive session, just to let everybody know, there's no reason, I guess, to hang around. We will not be voting on anything.
Madam President, I would like to request to be excused from executive session to avoid any conflict of interest around discussion of contract issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G4, I hereby move that the board adjourn to executive session to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning compensation, other terms and conditions of employment.
Second.
Mrs. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Bibb?
Yes.
Dr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mrs. Jonas?
Yes. Thank you.